Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard video. Today's video is going to be something a little bit different. It's not going to be a tactics video, it's more going to be maybe an advice video. It's in response to a few emails and comments that I've had and I've replied to them in text form, but I'd also thought it'd be a good idea to do an actual video on the questions that have been asked to me, which is something along the lines of the questions normally go like, dear Mordian Glory, I have recently started collecting Imperial Guard. I've got my hands on, sort of 20, 30 infantry, tank, this or that, blah, 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 blah. What should I get next for my collection? Now, this is always a really difficult question to answer. This is not going to be a cop-out answer. But it's always a really difficult question to answer because there's a lot of factors to take into account when it comes to giving advice about which models to buy. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what kind of players you regularly play against. I don't know if you're a competitive player or if you're a narrative player or if a thematic player. Maybe you just want the best possible units you can get. Well, probably should be playing Imperial Guard in 7th edition. But, that aside, you want the best Imperial Guard units. I don't know that from that. Or maybe you want a certain theme for your army. But, again, I don't know that. Or maybe you play fucking, like, Tyranids all the time. Tyranid Swarm list. And, I don't know that. And I go out and start recommending to you, get las cannons, get plasma guns. Well, that's not really going to help you against a fucking 200 gauntlet, is it? So it is a very difficult question to answer, even more so with 8th edition looming. We are seeing more and more stuff to do with 8th edition being released by Games Workshop. We've seen things like the psychic phase, how assault's gonna work, the three different game modes they're talking about, and I probably will do a video about these at some point. I mean, I don't like jumping on the bandwagon, but it is good to talk about these things. So, with 8th edition looming, it's even harder for me to suggest which models people should be buying or collecting because, simply put, I don't know what's going to be relevant in 6 months' time or 3 months' time. It's difficult to say. I could go out to you and say, you need Hellhounds. Hellhounds are amazing. And then, in 3 months' time or 4 months' time, when 8th edition drops, Hellhounds just become the worst unit choice. I mean, it's not great, is it? It's not good advice if it becomes obsolete. And I'm sure there's been situations in the past where someone, back in editions gone by, someone said, Rough Riders, make sure you buy lots of Rough Riders. Those units, those models are amazing. And there's probably some people there now with a massive bunch of Rough Riders going, well, these are shit and completely useless. So it is difficult for me to give you and give anyone advice about what models to buy for numerous reasons. But there are some things which I can give you advice on. Okay? Or some models, I should say, which I personally believe will always be the backbone of a good, balanced Imperial Guard army. Okay? Number one is the most obvious one, is the Guardsmen. The Imperial Guard is always going to need infantry. You're always going to need riflemen. You're always going to need just squads of blokes with a heavy weapon and a special weapon. You're always going to need these things. So that's one box. If you have got an absolute itching to go out there and buy some Warhammer and you don't want to wait till 8th edition, come what may, and you want to collect Imperial Guard, well, I can tell you straight up, you'll probably be absolutely fine buying some Imperial Guardsmen. That's one unit which we know we're always going to have. Touch wood, fingers crossed, throw some salt over your shoulder, any other superstitious thing you want to do, jump up and down on one leg, but I personally believe that you're always going to need Imperial Guard. I should say Imperial Guardsmen. So yeah, that's one thing, because if we believe the rumours from 8th edition, where anything can hurt anything, and things have just got lots of wounds. There's not going to be armor values anymore. If we believe those rumours, or I don't know if they may even be confirmed now, then you're definitely going to want lots of Guardsmen, because, you know, if your infantry, if your Guardsmen can hurt a Land Raider or an Imperial Knight, then that means suddenly all those las cannons and plasma guns and melter guns that were shooting at targets your las guns couldn't hurt, well, now your las guns can hurt them. That's really big. That's very big. That's very important. So yeah, you're always going to need riflemen. Second unit, which I think will always be a good staple backbone of the Imperial Guard, is the Leman Russ battle tank. The Leman Russ battle tank is, I would say honestly, is the most iconic tank in the whole of Warhammer 40k. You know, because there are a lot of vehicles out there which players don't use. A lot of Space Marine players don't use Predators. You know, a lot of Dark Elder players don't use Raiders. They use Venoms instead. You know, a lot of, you know, you might think the Rhino is an iconic tank, but it is. But at the same time, most Space Marine players prefer Razorbacks in the Decurion detachment. So you've got a lot of, you know, tanks which are quite iconic, but I personally think the Leman Russ battle tank is really, really iconic and renowned through the Warhammer 40k community. And most players will tell you, even inexperienced players and players who don't play Imperial Guard will tell you, you can't go wrong with it, with a Leman Russ. It's a good, solid backbone. And that's true. So I think you're always going to need Leman Russ battle tanks. Now I can't tell, or Leman Russ tanks, I should say. Now I can't tell you which variants of the Leman Russ will come and go, and which ones will be good and which ones will be bad. Okay, I can't tell you that. But I can say that the Leman Russ battle tank, the basic version, will obviously always be there, and will it's always been a solid tank. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's a good jack of all trades. So I think you'd be okay with that one. And I think you'd also be fine taking the Leman Russ Demolisher. Both of those are models that have been with the Games Workshop, been with the Imperial Guard since our first codex ever released. So I think we can safely say that those units will be safe. Leman Russes, and semi-specifically the battle tank and the Demolisher. The other variants I think will be fine, but I don't know if they'll stand the test of time as well as those basic tanks. Because even though, just a slight tangent here, I know a lot of people say, oh, the Leman Russ battle tank, it's not that great, or oh, the Demolisher, it's overcosted. And it's like, yeah, it is true, but those tanks are still good. They're just maybe not they're not the best tanks, but they're still good. If you take a Leman Russ Demolisher in your army, or take two, you won't be disappointed. They'll still do something, and the same with your Leman Russ battle tanks. They'll still achieve something. So I think they're safe. And the best bit is that another reason why I think that those two units are safe is look at what Games Workshop is selling. Look at the Start Collecting Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarum box set. They've been pushing those Start Collecting boxes hard. They've been really pushing Start Collecting boxes. Every faction's got one. They've all got a unique sort of photograph on the front. They've all got, a unique data sheet with them, unique formation. I think that Guardsmen and Leman Russes will be safe, because that's what Games Workshop is encouraging people to buy when they're starting Imperial Guard. Okay? Now the last unit, which I think is a safe bet if you guys aren't sure what you want to buy, but you want something to build and paint whilst you're waiting for 8th edition to come around, is the last unit, which I think will always be a staple, always be a backbone, always be a unit that you will never regret having one or two of them in your army, is the Chimera. The Chimera, it's our only decent transport out there, unless they decide to make the Taurox ungodly overpowered. The Chimera is the only decent transport we have, and it's good, and it does its job well, and every Imperial Guard army since the dawn of time has had chimeras. Every competitive army that isn't pure infantry features chimeras in some way. I mean, think about back to 5th edition, Imperial Guard Leaf Blower, when Imperial Guard was at the height of their power, you had chimeras. So, for all the reasons that I've mentioned about the Guardsmen, all the reasons that I've mentioned about the Leman Russ battle tank, the Chimera is a solid choice. There's no Imperial Guard army, really complete without them, and I think that they will also be kept relevant and useful for 8th edition. Now, one thing I want to say is, and not just 8th edition, but in general, if you are starting to collect Imperial Guard and you're not sure what you want to buy, those 3 choices will always do you proud. Obviously, that includes, when I say like Guardsmen, that includes, you're going into officer squads, so those command boxes, they'll be relevant. Obviously, Commissars, they're there in the Start Collecting box, they're worth an honourable mention. If the Games Workshop is encouraging you to buy Commissars, that's often a good sign that they'll be relevant in the future. I'm not so sure how relevant Priests will be in the future, as they haven't had an updated model for the Imperial Guard yet. Not that I know of, anyway. But yeah, so those 3 choices should be fine. Now, I know honourable mention here to 8th edition, or caveat I should say, to 8th edition. I know Games Workshop on the website have said all models that Games Workshop currently produces will be supported in 8th edition. Okay? I know they've said that. But, so in theory, you're absolutely fine to go out and buy whatever you want and not worry about it, because it's still going to have rules in next edition, in theory. However, we're talking about which units will be useful, which units are likely to be, not a waste of money because they're, not shit on the table. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So, I know that you will be able to, in theory, go out and buy whatever you want, but it's important to take into account what we think's been a steady eddy throughout the whole of our army's lifetime. So just to summarise, if you're not sure what you want to buy, if you start Imperial Guard, if you're worried about 8th edition making your model choices or your purchases irrelevant or a bad idea, you can't go wrong with Guardsmen / command squads, and you can't go wrong with Chimeras and Leman Russes. So I hope you guys found this video useful. I hope you found the artwork interesting. I thought it was a really cool little bit of artwork. I just found it on the internet, so whoever drew this, it's absolutely fantastic. And but yeah, overall, I hope you found this video useful, and I will see you guys next time.